A patient once said to me in complete innocence, "I want to change, but not if it means changing." About 20 years ago, I had a patient named Emily. Emily was 10 years old and had been brought to the clinic where I worked by her parents because she'd begun having accidents. She wet her bed at night and one day tried to flush a pair of dirty pants down a school toilet, causing it to overflow. Emily was a middle child. She had an older brother, Grant, who was 12, and a new baby brother. Before meeting Emily, I met with her parents to learn more about the family. They told me that Emily was something of a mystery to them. While Grant was a model student, Emily was not. Emily, her mother said, was not very bright and really clumsy. She's always making a mess at the table. When I remarked that Emily showed above-average intelligence on the clinic's testing and that her fine motor skills were normal, her parents looked at each other in surprise. "We were expecting you to tell us that she was dyslexic or something," Emily's father said. He leaned forward. "We just want her to be happy. It doesn't matter if she doesn't do as well as her brother." We agreed that I'd see Emily every morning before school, and we'd meet without her once a month. A few days later, Emily's father and brother brought her to the clinic. Father and son were both immaculately dressed. Her father in business suit, her brother in a school blazer. Emily, on the other hand, was a mess. Hair uncombed, nose runny. She sat swinging her legs, looking down into her lap. During our first session, Emily drew a picture of her family. After she finished, I pointed out that she hadn't drawn her new baby brother, Zach. She picked up the marker again, adding Zach to the picture, but she drew him in such a way that Zach was bigger than her. I had the thought that she didn't mind Zach, but she minded not being the baby anymore, and I told her this. She then told me that since the birth of her brother, no one took the time to sit with her when she was in the bath. My mum used to put toothpaste on my brush for me, but she says I'm a big girl now and I have to do it myself. For the rest of that first session, we talked about all the changes in Emily's life since Zach's birth. How Mummy stayed in bed with Zach in the morning, Daddy made breakfast and took her to school, how she had to read her own story at bedtime. A month later, at my next meeting with her parents, they told me that Emily had stopped having accidents, it seemed to them, after her very first session. They were grateful, but they thought it best to stop the therapy. 4 days later, they called to ask if I would take Emily back. She'd started having accidents again. During her year of therapy, there were 3 occasions, each immediately after her parents told her that they thought therapy should stop, when Emily had an accident. I don't think these accidents were deliberate. Rather, it seemed to me an involuntary reaction, Emily's way of trying to keep our conversation from ending. After the 3rd occasion, Emily came to her session and made a drawing. She began by sketching a tall old house. Then she drew a lorry and a motorcycle pulling up in front of the house. The truck was full of soldiers. As she drew a swastika on the side of the lorry, she said, "These are the Nazis." She drew 2 figures. "We're here, hiding in the attic. We're safe." In fact, we did meet in a small therapy room at the very top of a Victorian house that was home to the Anna Freud Center. Emily explained that her father had told her that Anna Freud and her father had fled the Nazis and come to live in England. She told me that she knew all about Anna Freud. They'd read bits of her book in school. She knew Anna Freud received a diary from her parents for her 13th birthday, and that she told her diary everything. It was her comfort, her support. I thought Emily's conflating of the stories of Anna Freud and Anne Frank said something about how she felt about our sessions, that her notebooks of drawings, the sessions themselves, were her diary. her comfort, her support. At the end of a year, Emily's parents and I agreed that the therapy could come to an end. She was doing better in school. She seemed better in herself. But the most surprising change was something I couldn't see. Someone else had to show it to me. Standing in the waiting room, I watched Emily leave the clinic with her mother and brother. "I like the way Emily has her hair now," the receptionist said. I agreed. "What do you think about what's happened to the rest of the family?" she asked. I told her that I wasn't sure I knew what she meant. She pointed out to me that over the past year, she'd noticed that as Emily got better, the rest of her family had become more and more disheveled, scruffy. "It happens a lot here," she continued. "As the children get well, their families change too." The receptionist's observation made me rethink the case. My sense was that my work with Emily helped her get a clearer picture of herself, her abilities and what she was capable of, as distinct from her parents' low expectations of her. She was better able to resist the role that was unconsciously assigned to her. Now I realized that, without knowing it or consciously wishing it, Emily's parents had made her the problem, so that they did not have to deal with problems of their own. When she changed, her family had to change too. 1 week before my final session with Emily, I had my last meeting with her parents. Towards the end of that meeting, they talked about themselves. Things had become very difficult between them in recent months. Did I think marital therapy would help? When she was 6 years old, Emma F. fell in love with her Year 2 teacher, Miss King. Miss King wore shiny hoop earrings and bright red nail polish. She and Emma shared a fascination with fossils. Once, Emma told Miss King that she was reading Charlotte's Web all over again, and Miss King squeezed Emma's hand. It was one of her favorite books, too. Before breakfast on the last Saturday of the school year, Emma sat down at the kitchen table to make a thank you card for Miss King. She drew a picture of an ammonite on the front, then opened the card and wrote, "Dear Miss King, you are the best teacher ever. Thank you for being my teacher. I will miss you next year. I love you more than anyone, even Mummy. Love, Emma. XXXXX." When our father sat down, Emma showed him the card. "You can't say that you love Miss King more than you love Mummy," he told her. "It's not true." Emma took a pink rubber from her pencil case and began to erase the last sentence of her note. Her father stopped her. "I can still read what you wrote," he said. "You need to make a new card." And it was because of this, because he didn't want any trace of her words to remain, that Emma knew she'd done something truly wrong. Emma soon forgot about her card and the exchange with her father, but 23 years later she remembered it during a psychoanalytic session. That morning, Emma had been late to meet her boyfriend Mark for coffee. Soon after she arrived, they got into an argument about Emma's relationship with her friend Phoebe. "He doesn't understand why I like her," she told me later. "He says I'm always down after I see her." "Are you?" I asked. "Mark says I am. I'm not asking what Mark thinks you feel. I'm trying to figure out with you what you feel." "He must be right. Why would he lie?" And it was then, when I didn't immediately answer, that she remembered Miss King. I'd been treating Emma for almost a year. She'd first come to see me because she'd become acutely depressed after beginning a PhD. In our first sessions, Emma described her childhood as normal, happy. But slowly, over the following months, another story surfaced. Emma's father was frequently away for work. Her mother was insecure, unsure of herself. They quarrelled frequently. Just before Emma's sister was born, Emma was sent to Scotland, to her grandmother's, where she stayed for 6 or 7 months. Without emotion, Emma described returning to her parents and new baby sister, and how she missed her grandmother and cried for her at night. My parents had this funny story about how, when I came home, I insisted on calling my mum Lady. I wouldn't call her Mummy. As best I could tell, Emma's parents' self-esteem, their emotional equilibrium, seemed dependent on Emma behaving, achieving. Events in Emma's early life that would ordinarily have caused a child anxiety, the first day of nursery, getting lost in a department store, seemed not to have bothered her at all. My suspicion was that Emma feared being sent away again if she allowed herself to feel her own feelings. And while Emma's skill in fitting in with her parents' wishes did not prevent the development of her substantial intellectual abilities, it did stop her emotional development. When Emma's PhD supervisor asked her to choose between 2 different areas of research, to tell him which area she wished to pursue and why, Emma broke down. Having to choose a direction, she had no compass. She was lost. In the quiet of the consulting room, Emma asked, "Why do you think I'm remembering Miss King's card now?" "Why do you think?" "I don't know. The conversation with my dad was like the conversation with Mark. Both were telling me what I really feel, or should feel." Emma said that she didn't understand how people knew what they really felt. "Most of the time, I don't know what I feel. I figure out what I should feel and then just act that way." I started to point out to Emma that she did know where to look. Her own memories, dreams, actions. Her memory of her father came to mind as we were talking about her argument with Mark. The 2 events felt similar to her. And, in telling me that she was late again to meet Mark, she was signaling to us both her lack of enthusiasm for seeing him. But, as I tried to explain my thoughts, Emma began to cry. "Miss King," she said, sobbing, "Miss King." Later, Emma would tell me that she didn't know why remembering that morning in the kitchen had made her so upset, so over-emotional. "Mum hates self-pity," she said. I told her that I didn't think it was self-pity. It was sadness. She seemed to be crying for the self she'd lost, grieving for the little girl who wasn't allowed to have her feelings.